Obviously, the pandemic has changed nearly every aspect of life as we know it, how we interact with family and friends, how we operate schools and daycares, and of course, how companies continue to do business, at least those lucky enough to be able to continue to do business. At the same time, organizations are grappling with racial justice reckonings, and the combination of the two have all but paralyzed many leaders. As one company head recently wrote in an op-ed in USA Today, traditional advice for CEOs no longer works. Business leaders need to look at the long game and prepare for action years down the road, just as I did while incarcerated. Yep, you heard that part right. John Valverde served 16 years in New York's Sing Sing Correctional Facility for killing the man who raped his girlfriend. While he was incarcerated, he earned an undergraduate degree in behavioral science, graduate degree in the ministry, took the LSAT, was accepted into law school, and even taught as an adjunct professor. He also co-founded 2 college programs. He joins me now as a long free man who's gone on to become CEO of the Somerville-based nonprofit YouthBuild USA, which provides education, counseling, and job skills to young unemployed adults and operates throughout the world. John, it's really good to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
John, you wrote in that op-ed that leaders are searching for the most effective ways to guide their organizations in these times, again, of racial reckonings and obviously the coronavirus. And you say the lessons you learned in prison provide a critical part of the answer. What specifically?
Serving 16 years in prison, you can't live just day to day, although actually, of course, that's what happens. You make it one day at a time. But if you put a lot of hope in an appeal coming through for you a year from now, or hope that there'll be some kind of criminal justice reform and policy change that will result in your release, you're likely to be disappointed, which can result in heartbreak and actually mental break. And I saw that over and over during my time in prison. So it's really guided my leadership now as a CEO to think about the long game, as you said, and not set goals based on these illusionary guideposts, but on where we can be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and in this particular case, perhaps when there's a vaccine available.
Yeah, but John, when you're in prison, I assume one has to think long term because there is no short term. And it seems to me when it comes to coronavirus, if you don't manage the short term, there is no long term. Do you see
Absolutely.
what I mean? Does that how does that fit into your thesis?
Well, the goal when you're incarcerated, I think the main thing is what we're seeing now with the social reckoning that you name and the racial injustice that we're all encountering and addressing in the ways that we can. The trauma that our young people in YouthBuild have experienced as a result of structural racism that impacts the criminal justice system leads to mental health challenges, substance abuse issues, and incarceration and other social ills. And these challenges, if not addressed on a longer term basis, or as you're describing, a shorter term goal basis to be better each day than you were the day before, better each year than the year we were before, that pace is how young people need to heal from their trauma through a program like YouthBuild, and how you also survive a period of incarceration, not just in the long term of survival and leaving you mentally distraught and emotionally distraught, but actually stronger at the end.
Yeah, but you write in your piece that some of the racial injustices have been festering, I think was your word, for centuries. But I know that a decent percentage of the kids that are enrolled in your program there have had encounters, experience with the justice system. And my guess is they might say to you, I've waited long enough. People before me have waited long enough. This is our moment. Unfortunately, our moment because of the horror that befell people like Floyd and Arbery and Taylor and people like that. What do you say to those young people who say, I'm sick of waiting. I don't want to know about the long term. I want it now.
Well, 2 things. One, obviously, COVID has exposed the disparities and inequities in our country and how it impacts the young people of YouthBuild, especially those who are young people of color. So we have to name that out loud, that it is a unique time where there is a lens on the world in a way that maybe we haven't had for some time. And that's important to name for our young people to see. And also for them to feel like, yes, they have waited long enough, but now the social capital they need, the mentoring they need, the supports they need, us trying to continually layer educational advancement, workforce or career training, leadership development on structural racism is the challenge that we've had for generations. Why our young people continue to be left behind is because you can layer amazing skill set, mindset, leadership development, but if you're laying it on top of structural racism, nothing really changes.
You know, John, can we switch from your hat as a CEO to your position as a son? Because I was watching something you said today. My understanding is one of the ways you got through some of the early years in prison is you reconnected with your father. But unfortunately, your father died before you got out of prison. And the parallels to me of these incredibly painful stories where people are in the, quote, prisons of their homes, their parent dying from the coronavirus and they can't be with them. Do you have any advice for those people based upon your experience?
I feel so grateful to have reconnected with my father. And early on in my incarceration, he said, say yes as much as you can to help others and you'll find purpose and meaning and be free. And I really lived by those words and I still live by them today. My greatest fear, as you noted, was to lose a loved one or for me to die in prison. And so I learned to live as best I could without regret. I know my father died knowing that I was already free and that I loved him and that he had helped me grow and that he had contributed to my life. And I don't wait anymore to let people know about that. And I use love openly, even with our staff and our young people. People need to know that you care about them and love them and want to support them in all the ways that you can. And that made it easier for me to let go of my father and continue this journey, and his legacy continues in me.
John Valverde, you're a hell of a guy. It's good to meet you. I hope to see you again.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Appreciate it.